play. Hello, if you're watching the replay, thanks for joining. And a hello to everyone, as you probably can see me, but I cannot see your comments yet, so I will wait impatiently and awkwardly as we do. You're like, okay, no one, 10 comments.
Way to not make it weird.
No, not at all. Hi, Angela. Hi, Ray, my lovely co-hosts for today. Hi, Tim. How are you ladies today? What are your feelings?
Well, so I live on the east side of Cleveland, which means we don't get a lot of sun in the winter, but today there is sun.
Oh, look at that.
I know, right?
Can't relate, but happy for you.
Well, and haven't you guys, I don't know, because it hasn't affected the coasts in the south as much, but there's been all this fog lately, like over continental US, and like it's been some like gothic horror story over here, like, and that's so weird.
It hasn't been every day, but it was like, I think it was a day last week where it was for hours. I was like, I literally can't see the house behind. It was bad.
Yeah.
And then a couple months ago, maybe November or early December, it was really bad. And there was like this massive pile up kind of down closer to New Orleans. I was like, oh, yikes. Yeah. There they go. Hello. Hey. Hi, everyone.
No, but I have a bunch of really tall old oak trees on my street. So with the fog, it looks very much like it should be November. Or like some Halloweenish shit should be going down.
Ray, how's the Philly streets? Is it sunny, cloudy, rainy?
It's been cloudy like all week. There was a few foggy days, and so I went out this morning to get some stuff, and it's like not bad. It's not freezing anymore. It's not 20 degrees anymore, so that's something.
Amen. Hallelujah. Hi, Heather.
Oh, hello.
Well, thank you for your input. Have fun.
Enjoy that spoiler-free review. I thought that you can spoil an essay collection.
I always wonder that, like when I would make videos. So, I haven't done a wrap-up in so long. I will have a wrap-up for January. I'm so excited. But I'm always like, can you spoil nonfiction? Like, I don't know. I'm never good at reviewing it because I'm like, I don't know how much to say.
Yeah.
I think you can only spoil true crime if someone doesn't know what happened in real life, because it's meant to be kind of like that mystery thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, I think it's when it's dramatized nonfiction and the person picking it up doesn't know that life, like that historical event.
Yeah. True. But this, I'm trying to think, when did this come out? And this, I was rereading this. Okay, so this was published in 2016.
Yeah.
I thought it was earlier than that, but.
Well, some of the speeches are from earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the speeches are around the 25th anniversary of emancipation, right? Am I making that up?
Yep. No, you're right.
Like, not the 25th, but the 200, I don't know, some 25 at the end landmark.
I'm not good with numbers, but I was like, somewhere, something like that. Yes.
Somewhere.
Well, as y'all are coming in, if y'all read the book, and if you rate nonfiction, as some people, I don't rate memoirs, but I rate most likely nonfiction. So if you want to give your general thoughts or your rating, Angela, what did you think overall?
Well, obviously predisposed to liking the books. The author's name's Angela. That automatically gets an extra half star. Now, I actually do find it hard to rate nonfiction because it's like I rate almost everything else on quote unquote the enjoyable reading experience, and that's like not a 1-to-1 with nonfiction. But I do think in terms of like the project of collecting all of these essays and like the thesis of it and how on message it was about its thesis as a collection, I thought it did really well. And I mean, I listened to the audiobook, and Angela Davis has an amazing voice. So I enjoyed picking up one of the chapters for like a walk or like driving to an errand or something like that, because it would be like the perfect amount of time for that type of activity. So.
Yes, I did a hybrid. I was listening, but also because the first time I read it, I did an ebook, and this time I wanted to make notes. So I also listened, and I do like her voice as well.
Well, especially for the speeches, because it has her cadence. Because a lot of times when you're making a speech, like the prose style is meant to have certain pauses that only make sense if you're like listening to someone.
Yes. I think the only downside maybe to the audio because of it being speeches and not read as a narrative is that sometimes like I had sped it up and I was like, I feel like it was kind of weird sometimes. Like if I was like, okay, let me go back maybe down to 1.8 because the 2 it's I don't
did
know.
that too. I had to listen to it slower than I normally do because I'm like, oh, she actually not off topic, but on topic for audiobooks. I once listened to an audiobook where Tom Hanks was the narrator, and he does not do audiobooks, and you can tell because if you do that at like a normal speed, it's like a little like chipmunk voice. Like he talks very fast, even at like 1.7. So.
Yeah, sometimes you gotta adjust. So I was like, oh, let me slow it down a bit. And I was like, that's better for my ears. Also listen to audio, listen to one speech or essay at a time. Yes, I also like that they're just like just like one little piece. Like you could just read that and have, get a takeaway. Not like other books aren't, but with it being like essays / speeches, they are just good to be like, I'm listening to just this one. I could see that. That's something I wanted to touch on. I mean, we could touch on it now or later, but the repetitive what are words? Repetition. I mean, so Angela was saying this to me. It could be. I know some people see that as a con, but also can be seen as a positive. So, Angela, what are your thoughts on that? Or like, why do you think it's a positive with the repetition?
Oh, why do I think it's a positive with repetition? Well, I mean, obviously it's repetitive because like she's been honing her craft for years, right? Angela's been trying to get people to understand her messaging for decades. She's been in this for the long haul. And so obviously she has found in her talks like certain examples and things to point out that resonate with people. And so I think it makes sense why those would come across the work. And also, I don't think she's probably paid a lot for each of these events. So you can't just keep recreating the wheel each time you're making a speech or an essay, right? Like how many times are you going to start your cover letter from scratch? You're not going to do that. So
yes,
I think from like a logic, from a perspective of this project was not, okay, Angela, sit down and write like 12 different essays for this. Logically, it made sense. But also for me, and I find, and maybe this is because I'm a bad like nonfiction reader, sometimes I tune out. Sometimes I'm not paying like super strict attention to everything. So I know something's important when it's brought up a couple times, and then actually it's repetitive, but it comes from different angles. At least in my opinion, it came from different enough angles that I was like, oh, these are different ways for me to maybe engage with it myself and then also talk to other people about it in case certain paths or the same thought aren't met. I don't know.
Yeah. The audiobook definitely, I think this one, and obviously it depends on you and the book, but this is definitely a good audio. And just any of hers, because again, when she's...
If you've ever been to a seminar with a bad speaker, treat yourself to Angela Davis. Okay.
That's true, yeah. It wasn't like made, like this is a compilation of things she already had like spoken about and kind of putting them into one. So that makes sense why some of the things, like you said, like each speech, like I'm gonna sit down and write a whole, that sounds like that would take too much time. Repetition of the message of pro, repetition of the anecdotes, a little bit of a con. That's fair. I definitely read it slow. I read it like a chapter at a time. I pick up one, maybe do two. So that's also helpful if you don't read it in one go, because maybe, like you said, maybe you tuned out or maybe you missed something the first chapter, but it's said again in chapter 4, and it's like, oh yes, great point. Ray, what did you think?
So this was a reread for me. I read it at 5 both times, listened to the audio, which again, definitely for me, I think was very helpful just because again, Angela Davis just has a really soothing voice, great for audiobook narration. And I think that to Angela's point, like, yeah, it is repetitive, but also like, you know, she's tailoring her speeches to her audience also. So like the speech that she's giving in London is going to be different than the speech that she gives in Chicago. And while she's relating it to the same thing, I think that is a pro because she's taking historical events in those places and relating it to what she's talking about in the current climate. So I personally don't think that the repetition is a bad thing, especially because, again, these are speeches that she had given and not like, hey, we want you to write a book about Palestinian struggle. That would be a totally different tone. But I think that in this situation, it worked out the way that it did.
I don't even know how to fix that, Con, and maybe that's why in my head it's like, I guess, yes, sure, maybe for your enjoyment, or maybe you wanted something new, that'd be annoying, but how do you even fix that? These were speeches she gave in like 2012 that she's putting into a 26. Like, I don't know how to fix that.
Yes. I think, and maybe people don't go into it knowing that it's like speeches in a collection, instead of thinking it's just like one piece about. But I mean, I still think it still comes together great, because I mean, even look, in my minor time of writing papers, sometimes, I mean, you do have to like go back to like your thesis point, or be like hammer in the detail, or how all these things connect. So yeah, I don't know how I rated it the first time. I didn't put it back on, I didn't like rate it again on Goodreads or anything, but I still think it was great.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think also spreading it out is good for this one, at least for me, because, and I think Angela Davis kind of brings this across, this idea of how we socialize together in communities, how freedom is obtained, how it's still like actually present today in a way that people don't like connect the dots of. Like, you kind of have to sit with a thought, or you don't have to, but I think it's better when you sit with it and then you approach it again. Because like, I think you have to actually already be doing the work and be doing all the activism to not like need to sit with some things and like really let it like sink in. And I don't know if I'm really expressing myself right, but it's just like,
no, I mean,
it's involved.
Because when I read it, did I read it? No, I don't think it was last year, maybe a couple years ago. I think it was 2020 or maybe early 2021. And I feel like I had a different experience at reading it now, as obviously I'm a different person now and have learned more things, and like I appreciate more of what she's saying, or really understand, especially some of the parts with like, and from reading other nonfiction and different discussions we've had, especially on like the individualism versus community part, and really with just like the struggles under capitalism that I've just learned in the past few years. So now reading this, I'm like, you said that, girl. Yes.
I also think that I think that a lot of us now know a lot more about what's going on in Palestine, so it resonates more because we're actually like aware of what's really going on. Whereas like when this came out in what, 2017 you said?
2016, I think.
2016. I mean, there was something happening. Like, there's always something happening in Palestine.
Yeah.
But
yeah, exactly. But I feel like recently has been like the first time that like on a global scale, like people are actually like watching what's going on.
Yeah. Because like I've always in my mind been aware of the Israel-Palestine conflict, but I never looked into it. And then only in the last couple of years I've been like, oh, conflict. Maybe that's incorrect.
I mean, I've learned to trust young Angela way more than I do adult Angela and other adults. Because when I was a kid and we learned about World War II, and I'm in an incredibly Jewish community here in Cleveland, we learned about the Holocaust. And then they tell me about Israel. I'm like, okay, so in the 1940s, we make Israel. What happened to the people that were there? And no one ever had an answer. And apparently it's because the answer is fucked.
Yeah. You're like, well, I mean, the whole thing, like learning about, because I think only in the last couple of years did I learn that Israel was created so recently. Like I just didn't know that. But learning the phrase they had, the land for a people, or like a people without a land for a land without a people. I'm like, but the land had people. I don't get it. Yes, it definitely. Yeah. We are now so very aware, which is good, but also.
Yeah. I think that this was a really good choice for you to kick off the book club for the year. Because it's very
because like she makes it a point, Angela, like in the text, of connecting it to struggles that we can relate to here in continental US, because that's the primary audience. Like, yes, there are some speeches that take place in London and stuff, but her primary audience for most of these essays and speeches are people in the United States.
Yeah, like just connecting it, because she's talking about Ferguson and obviously our industrial prison complex. It's not just here, it's worldwide. Ugh. But to go, now obviously I have some banners and normal things that happen or probably get derailed, whatever. But just to start this first one, just because I wanted to touch on this part about Obama, because as a young Black whose first election was voting for Barack Obama, okay, I am forever upset in my feelings about the, like, I guess I don't want to say betrayal, but it feels like that because I was a young hopeful and really believing in democracy then, kind of to a point I had, and then just learning more as I've grown up, and then really just like realizing that he still was just like the other ones, just brown. It just really hurts my spirit. So anyway, this was the first. This I think was the first chapter, maybe after the introduction. And I just also, because of our government wanting to take down TikTok so hard, and like Obama making the comment about, like, oh, they're on TikTok or whatever, they're not doing, like, they're not out here voting or not doing real social movements. But it just bothers me because, like she said, literally his campaign was like the first one that was like really driven by an online force, like a cyber movement that achieved what seemed to be impossible. So like, but then she said the problem was that people associated themselves with that movement did not continue to wield that collective power as pressure that might have compelled Obama to move in more progressive directions. Which I don't even know. This is negative. But I don't even know if there's a way for us to make leaders act not murderous in capitalism. Yeah, like, I don't know, but my main thing is I just wanted to express how mad I am at Obama. Okay, that's really what I have. So I don't know if you want to have anything.
I mean, I do think Angela's point was more like, okay, everyone came together because I think because we're so individualistic, competitive, we like to see things accomplished. We want tangible things. Yes. Winning an election is a tangible thing. Exhaustively having a social movement that will slowly get legislative passed that does stuff and still keeping that same momentum going. Like, we're purposefully not trained to keep that momentum going. Like, it's built in. It's not a bug.
Very like, well, we got here and we did this, so we won, because it was like hope. And it was like, I remember watching the election results and I was like, oh my God. And same Taryn, I was like, don't you talk about Barack Lee like that. No, he's our savior.
I mean, even Angela in the book, though, is like, I can still like Obama and critique the man. Like, it's not like...
Yes, this is true. But I think that's, I don't know if that's like a moment in history you can say that was like a setback or something. But just like you said, like, I do feel like we got to that point and it was like, okay, this is it. We're putting all our faith in this one person to do all the things and change all the things. And we can rest now. And then it just got worse.
But I think, and that's a really good connection to the stuff she brings up later on with like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and how we thought that would happen because we were taught in school that, look, this Black guy was successful in doing stuff, this Black guy was successful, when in reality, no, it wasn't these individual Black guys, it was these whole movements.
Yes.
But we don't teach in movements, we teach in individual success.
Yes. Because just like like you saying, we learn about like individual people, Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, like, and yes, these are important figures, but it doesn't talk about all of the other hundreds of thousands of people who were boycotting and picketing and doing all of those things. So you look at it like, well, where's our savior? Where's our MLK, our one person? And I feel like, and that might be extreme, but I feel like Obama kind of was something like that, like our person. That's our Martin. And no. No. Yes, he is great.
Very charismatic.
You know, and it was
his taste of books is suspect. I don't like all of his tastes in books. He likes the power, and it's a little weird.
Those lists are true because the music on there, I'm sorry. I know people can be eclectic, but I don't think those lists are truly hit reflections.
I don't know if I believe that.
I think it's somebody just writing it. Like, what would be a good look for you to, or like, what can you bring attention to? I think it's an intern or somebody.
Right. That's true. Because like, honestly, I don't know if either of you read The Power, but I did. And I'm like, really? This is the book you've decided is like this life-changing reverse feminism? Oh, okay.
I did. Ooh.
Well.
She said it. I feel like he did the best he could within the system, but the way the U.S. is set up is deliberately built to get nothing done. The master's tools cannot dismantle the master's house, which is a great quote. And so that's how I felt for a while. I don't know. Again, our system needs to be dismantled. I don't know how you do that, which is a question I have later. But yeah, I don't know, because you look at it, and obviously during his time, there were things, but I mean, learning of all the things he still did, like dropping bombs on all these countries and all these things, and it's like, but again, as a president, I don't know if you're allowed to not do that, or allowed, but I feel like it's like, well, here you go. Who are you gonna drop a bomb on this month? Make the choice. You don't get to pick none.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I also do think, and people I think forget about this a little bit, like he's a very rich man, which means he plays by a different set of rules.
Yes.
And there are different things in the system that benefit him and his family. Like,
yep. Yeah. So that, and obviously me being going hard for Obama was way before I got into the part of, realizing capitalism and like realizing aspiring to be a millionaire or a billionaire was not ethical or realistic. And then you're like, wait, and learning how our system is all just based on who raises the most money, which makes so much sense for who you want to lead your country.
The fact that our politicians have to spend so much of their time in office on the phones for money, I'm like, oh my God, I just want them to be actually doing their job. Like, what is
You're
this?
like, no, I must fundraise. Eh? Hello,
John.
Yeah, so under that though, in the same chapter, so because there's like the question and answer part, and one of the questions was, do you think it's time for people to disengage completely from the main political parties? And so her response was, I do think the electoral arena can be used as a terrain on which to organize, and saying that in the US we need an independent political party that's anti-racist, feminist, workers party. So I guess it's the same. And so my question I wrote in here is like, is this possible? Do you think it's possible for our current electoral system and then I guess, successful independent party, or like, can those two things even coexist? Because I'm going to say that I'm skeptical that with the way our electoral is set up, or just the two-party system, that any independent party has a chance.
I have an answer, but I feel like I've talked a lot. So Ray, if you have something.
I feel like that's hard, because it would take years for us to dismantle the current electoral process that we have. And I also just think that a lot of times when people are going to the polls, they're like, oh, well, I don't like the Republican candidate, so I'm just going to vote for the Democrat. And like, I feel like I don't even know if I don't want to say it's not possible, but I'm also not very confident in it.
Yeah.
And it would just take too long. I don't think that is something that we would ever see in our lifetimes. So
I think part of it's also, and part of it's built in, right, is that it's really hard to have an engaged electorate. And I think that only works if you have an engaged electorate. Like, even because, I mean, yes, the federal level, the electoral college, that's its own mess, but you still have local and state level, which are more popular vote. Yes, there's the gerrymandering sometimes for certain things for your legislative area and everything. But in general, though, and this came up because I actually have a friend who works for the mayor of Chicago. So like, that's what she does over there. And so I get to hear her gripe a lot because she's trying really hard to do things and be progressive, but there's all these things in the way. And then sometimes, like, even the constituents, they don't know what their local government does. That's a big thing, right? As an electoral base, we don't know what your city or state government does until they do something really, really good, which is rare, or really, really bad. Like the middle ground, we don't know anything on average. So we're not an engaged or informed electorate. And so she was like, she's very like pro-Palestine, but she was being frustrated because a lot of people are calling in and being like, we need to do a ceasefire thing. It's like, okay, we can do that, but we're using our resources to do that instead of helping the migrants here who are being shuttled over from Texas And us saying we have a ceasefire doesn't actually legislatively do anything. So I'm spending my resources to do this.
I was wondering, because I've seen these states and I'm like, but what does that mean that a state is passing a ceasefire? Because it's not.
So she's frustrated because to her, it feels like lip service. It doesn't feel like it's doing anything, but the electorate doesn't know that.
Yeah.
And they want that shiny thing that we've done a thing.
Yes. They're like, well, we know we can target it on this one thing. But don't even get me started about the migrants just being shipped. Ugh. But I feel like again, I'm negative Nancy. I just don't feel like it's possible. I know for this election, there is the women, I cannot think of their names right now, I feel really bad, who are running on the independent ticket, but we have been so Republican, Democrat for so long. I feel like so many people, like obviously in our niche, it seems like we know people who are very in tune and reading things and reading up on what's going on, and we want these answers. But I feel as a collective whole, just like you said, not engaged electorate, people just have kind of this like distant overview of like, oh yeah, it's an election year, this guy's bad, this guy's less bad, and they're not like looking. So I don't feel like
it's just like the lesser of two evils.
Yes,
still trash.
I don't feel like they're like taking the time to really think through these things and like think about an option that isn't Republican or Democrat for the independent to even have a chance. And then of course, again, through the raising money thing, we, the people who would want to have an independent party, don't have the money to give to an independent candidate. And if they're truly like an independent candidate who's anti-racist, anti-fascist, all these things, then they wouldn't be selling out to a big corporation like AIPAC or all these lobbies. So how do they get money?
Yeah,
I just don't think it's possible.
Well, and also like, and I hate, and I'm not trying to be one of these dude bros on Twitter or whatever, but mathematically speaking, the chances of someone switching from one of the main two parties to independent is probably from Democrat to independent.
Yeah.
I just don't see you changing the minds of the people voting for Trump. And then
they're not.
No, because they don't listen to reason. Because you could still
so then
say,
it's like, okay,
Literally.
I feel bad that I'm voting for this person who doesn't completely align, but also I truly cannot handle that man in the Oval Office again. Like I can't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, also just think about think about like after Bernie Sanders left the race and all the white men who were going to vote for Bernie who turned around
Bernie bros.
They didn't want to vote for a woman. Like
those Bernie bros drove me insane. I'm like, Bernie only entered because the Bernie bros weren't getting behind Elizabeth Warren, and I was so angry because she was this is before COVID, right? But she was my hopeful.
Yes, me too. It's so frustrating. So just reading that, I was like, I would love to think it's possible, but in our system, again, and she talks about this later with prison reform, that there's really no way to reform prisons. You just make a better prison. And I feel that way about American politics. Like, I don't feel like there's a way to repair it. I think the whole thing has to start from scratch. I don't know how you do that.
Yeah.
So,
trying to dismantle our entire system would just
shut it down.
I want to burn everything, and I understand I'll get burnt a little bit. I won't turn out 100% okay. I think about it sometimes. It's like, if I was told I had to house someone who was not in my family, how would I respond? And I'd be like, okay, I would be a little awkward and I wouldn't like it. But I guess if it meant that at the end of the day, things were better, I guess I'd do it. But I wouldn't love it because I do like having my own space and I don't really want to share it.
Yes. And, I acknowledge my problems. I got a lot of them. I think a big thing, I am a very individualistic person because I've grown up in the United States, but I want the community aspect. But another thing was, so she was saying, obviously the racism is not just like one racist person. It's not just, you can look and there be like, oh, there's racist white Joe. It is in everything. It's in healthcare, it's in education, it's in our military, like the police, all of it. And so I think this is really I forgot what you call questions that don't really need answers.
Rhetorical.
Yes, because I think it's with the whole system, that the whole thing has to be dismantled.
I feel like that's part of our problem for a lot of things is that there are things that are just so embedded in American society and politics and culture. And like, just like quickly pointing out John's comment about our gun laws, like, no, because Republicans and people who are like very hard on the Second Amendment, like, you know, this is our constitutional right, aren't listening to why we want gun reform. We're not telling you can't have your guns. We're not trying to take your guns away from you. We just don't want them easily accessible to people who are dangerous. That is it.
Hear that.
But they're not listening to that. They're like, you want to take my guns, so no. And so it's things like that where it's just so embedded in American culture that it's too hard to change, unfortunately. Yeah. Like, no matter how, I mean, if it happened at any time, again, I don't think any of us, I think we would be long gone before anything happens.
Like, there are small strides that are made. There's actually more data now about what's more effective and not, but like, those are our baby steps.
So like, even still, like, talking about like in the medical industry, like medical racism has been a problem for some beginning of time. And it's just now that like they're learning how to do MRIs on Black people who have braids in their hair, or like simple things like that, and like understanding that the default for a lot of things in our system, whether it's medical education, politics, whatever the case may be, is centered around white people. And so everything is skewed in a way that when it comes to people of color, and especially Black people, our concerns aren't listened to. We're told we're being dramatic. We're constantly misdiagnosed for shit because people have all these preconceived notions and are taught those things in medical schools still. And it's taking forever for those to be dismantled, and we're seeing it happen slowly, but still it's not happening at a rate where these problems would ever disappear within the next 100 years.
Yeah, because even just like, there's one doctor that I see on TikTok, and just even in like medical textbooks and anatomy textbooks, it's always white, how rashes present on white skin. Yep. And I read a book, is it called Invisible Women? A couple years ago.
It is a book.
Did you read it? Did you not?
No, because we didn't read it for this. It was in the science book that we didn't talk about last January, but there was a book we read last year. I can't remember what it was called.
It's on my shelf. I can't read it. It's too far. I know what you're talking about. But there was another one I read, and the whole basis of the book that I'm referring to was talking about how all of the world is basically built for men, but basically white men, just even talking about how like seatbelts were tested or medication, like all of these different things. And so she is just like, and why we need demands that go beyond the prosecution of the individual perpetrators. But again, I don't know how for the whole system, like everything since the dawn of our existence as a country has been based on, made for white men with little changes here and there. But it's like, what has it been, 200 something years, 245 years, and we're still inching like, did you mean, so you said it's less burn everything down and more stop or start carving out support for minorities and the oppressed? But then you get to, because if you mean to start carving out those support, the problem is,
I mean, I took it as like we had support systems, right, that were built, but we've been getting rid of funding for them.
Because then it gets into woke politics and everybody and identity politics, like they always want, and like it's because people have different ideas.
Yeah, like, did you guys see that TikTok? It was a white male doctor who was like, every time I have Black patients, they're always on the phone with someone, and we're like, really, dude? Come on now.
Like, why is this? Because you don't believe nobody. They need a witness. They need support. Yes, when talking about Ferguson, it's like, that sounds great, but, and I don't know if she said this or I heard this somewhere else, there's truly no justice after a person is murdered. Like, that's just this one person experiencing consequences, but that still doesn't change the system because it just keeps happening.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just still this with hair.
Literally.
I'm just like, in 2024, a workers' party that has the interests of regular people, both Republicans and Democrats, protect the interests of big business. Yes. Yes. But again, with our system being based on money, it's like, yes, the workers' party represents the working people who don't have enough money on the working party, which
it's all truly by design. It's So frustrating.
Doctor said the pains and symptoms were in my head for over 30 years. Yep, they just, oh, you can tolerate pain more. Thank you.
Oh yeah, no, because we don't feel pain, Jess, obviously.
No, strong Black woman right here. Yeah.
That I would be pissed. I would be pissed.
I would not be surprised.
Yeah.
But okay, where was I? Okay, to prison abolition. This is something that I keep saying I want to read more about separately, and I have
She has a
read
book.
Our Prisons Obsolete
Obsolete, yeah.
by Angela Davis.
It's very small, short.
It's
yes. And I read that and I was like, I need more. And I have one called The End of Policing. I haven't read that because I understand everything she's saying about like, we can't have prison reform because it's just making prisons better and the whole prison industrial complex. And then recently, like this week, I saw in the news how they have tied all of these major corporations to like prison labor. Like we always see like, oh, they make license plates or whatever in prison, and then some people work release. But no, these people are like farming, like making food and like products for major brands and being paid little to nothing. So basically slave labor. And I'm like, which not coincidentally, they're also trying to make being houseless illegal and all. It's like, and they're all the rates or prices for everything going up. So it's like, are you sounding like you're trying to get more people?
Well, and there are now those states that are passing the laws that you can't bail other people out, or you can only bail out X number of people.
Actually.
And like prisons, like I have a very like personal relationship with prisons where I'm just like, they are not good places. Like, and like, I find it actually, like, I think, again, as we're kids, we're growing up, people get disciplined when they do things bad. So we're very used to a discipline pipeline. So I think it's very easy to be like, yeah, they broke the law, so they get punished. But I don't think the follow through of the punishment, people truly understand how horrendous it is.
Yep.
Like, they can't even, like, they barely have anything.
Yeah.
Like, it's horrible.
The conditions are disgusting. The lack of just like obviously like mental support and physical activity, the ones that have them on lockdown for the majority of the day. Solitary confinement is insanity. And that's just throw them in there to do that. And she says, like, so she says, so prison reform has always created better prisons. And so, because of course they always say it as like, this is supposed to be some kind of rehabilitation. Like that's what they love to say when people go to prison. But she said, of course, in prison, they find themselves within a violent institution that reproduces violence. In many ways, you can say that the institution feeds on that violence and reproduces it so that when the person is released, he or she is probably worse. And, you know, you see why you see recidivism and so many repeat offenders, because then you have all of these restrictions on when they get out and they have to, I only learned recently, like they're paying to be on house arrest or like the ankle monitor. How are you paying if you don't have a job? I don't, what do you mean? And I just so like my only thing with prison abolition, if like in this far future where prisons are obsolete, like we don't have them anymore, is what you do with the truly despicable people, which are not a large percentage of, because I even think for stuff like robbery and stuff like that is a symptom of a system of people not having enough of stuff. Like, of course, there are some random rich people who just want to do stuff because they're stupid. But the truly malicious, you know, serial killers, serial rapists, child predators, I'm like, what do we do with them? Where do they
what
go?
actual percentage of our population is that?
Yeah. And I feel like that's small. And so I just don't know, you know, I do get mad and I do be saying, put him under the jail. But I just... Oh, I know.
Like, I just feel like sometimes we make rules for the absolute worst case scenario. It really hurts a whole shit ton of people.
Yes.
And like, it's the worst case scenario. It's like, yeah, it sucks when it happens, but that literally is like 1 out of every like million or 2.
And they're like, you
like,
all will pay the consequences. We love a collective punishment, huh? Love that. But because she, of course, as we know, there's a disproportionate amount of Black and brown people in prison. And so she was talking about abolishing the prison is attempting to abolish racism, because then there's illiteracy, prisoners who are illiterate. Also, this goes back into voting, because then so many people lose their right to vote. by going to prison. So you see certain prisons have really good programs and stuff for like education, but a lot of them don't. They don't have the money, or they don't have the infrastructure to do it, or if they do, it's like very few prisoners who have access to those rights. And she also said, which I didn't know, the 3 largest psychiatric institutions in the country are jails in New York. So Rikers Island, Cook County Jail, and LA County Jail. It's because so much of it, I feel like, is mental illness and all these things, and even like drug abuse. I'm like, throwing them in prison, how does that help somebody? Because you arrested them, they were on drugs. But it just everything sucks. Let me get to these comments.
There's a lot of them.
That's the answer. Everything sucks.
Killed by the police while waiting. Yes.
Yep.
And it's like, great.
Or the person who was trying to call for help for something, but he knocked on someone's door. They assumed he was a burglar, and he got arrested, and like stupid shit.
Yep. Never change the system. Oh, abolition. Okay. Look that up. I appreciated the essays more, although I think this book was edited expecting a lot of pre-knowledge. I got another one, and the tech was like, braids make it easier because they have neat parts. And I was like, what? Yikes.
Okay.
The Teen Gang All-Stars. Okay, I've seen that cover.
Oh, I want to read that book real bad. He wrote the short story collection Friday Black.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one.
That's the same author, so that's his debut. And the cover just looks pretty. It's like this nice yellow color. And
I've seen that.
I just want it.
A lot of declarative statements and no backup statements or citations for anything is important facts, which bothered me. When you say declarative, what do you mean?
I do think for the print edition, maybe it would have been nice for someone to go through her speeches and put in citations, but a lot of the speeches, for sure, like you don't have citations when you're speaking.
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
I think that is something that could have strengthened it.
Yeah, exactly. I think again, if she had been writing a novel, it would have a much different feel.
Because that's a very normal thing in nonfiction. But yes, it's the same thing here, because it's like, can you get a job? It's very hard to get a job where you can live. Then you
guys want to hear a real fun story of where everything actually could go as well as it could and it still goes to shit? Because that's my life. Because like my dad was given a nice judge who had them go to rehab, but then ICE still wanted him back in jail after he finally got a job after house arrest, so he could be part of society again. And then he got deported because
because of course.
Yeah. A commitment to rehabilitation would require us all to unlearn the carceral punishment-based mindset. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And we don't. I don't know. I just don't know the answer, because so much. Also, with our healthcare system and the cost prohibitiveness, I don't know. And also, I think with Black and brown people, an inherent distrust. Those two things, I think, make it harder for people to get diagnosed with things early on. We don't have I feel like they don't have enough mental health facilities or people, or it's hard to get me with insurance. It's been hard for me to find a therapist. And I, like with a job, with a 2-income household, some of these people don't take insurance and like, I want $300 a session. I'm like, well, I love that for you. A lot of
all this stuff requires like patience and nuance, which we're not given the bandwidth to even have, because we're all like the vast majority of people in the world right now are just trying to go paycheck to paycheck to get their groceries, pay their bills. So where is the bandwidth to be patient for your fellow man and like,
the time too? If you're working all the time, everything else is at the same time you're working, and it's like, oh, now I need to spend time trying to research and do these things. Or again, capitalism ruins everything.
Well, and then like you were saying, fixing your own mental health, there is no magic pill or anything like that. You have to be patient and going through all the things. And like, I remember I was having a breakdown last fall, and I probably should have seen a doctor, but I'm like, I'm moving in 3 weeks. I'm not seeing a doctor. They're not going to fix me in 3 weeks. I'm going to need a new pill or something. And it's just
you just put it off, and you're like, I don't have time. I don't have time for that right now. The voting. And it's crazy because aren't they included in the population count, but they can't So they're like included toward
which
the
is literally
Electoral
back
college.
to how the first article was written for the 3/8 rule. And it's just
infuriating. Well, I think we would find that truly despicable people would never do the things they did if they had support. Yes, I think like the small, I think maybe 1% or probably even less are truly just inherently evil people who want to do something for no reason. But like I keep seeing things on like TikTok just about like the state of Oakland and stuff. And of course people just always want to be like, oh, it's because the people, but it's like, well, what's there? They don't have jobs. Their housing just keeps going up. But no one, they never want to take it back to these basic rights because, of course, they don't think anyone's should have basic rights. They're like, what do you just want me to give someone a place to live? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. It's so wild, even though every time we have a study that shows if you give people resources, they spend it on improving themselves and their well-being. How many more studies do we need of that? Like, truly, why are my taxes going to help Israel and not to help the people in my neighborhood who don't have a house? Why?
Hello.
Yeah. Why?
Or all these companies allowed to just price gouge on food. So it's like, yes, I do just want you to give someone a place to live, and I do just want you to give them food. Yeah, I do. When people say that,
I'm very pro basic income, universal healthcare, and I don't care if I'm suddenly taxed 50%, because I would also get that basic income and I get that healthcare.
But they love to say that as a gotcha, and I'm like, actually, yes, that's exactly what I want. They're like, so this lazy person who's not working, be quiet.
Yes, because then that lazy person won't bother me. They'll just watch TV.
Yes.
Like.
Yes. And let's not even start with the minimum wage still being $7.25, I think, in 2024. That's
in this economy.
Yeah.
a lot. You can trace a lot of this underlying societal philosophies, the way we discipline children directly tied to being okay with punishment and acceptance of authority. Very much. That is our system. It's like, instead of you do this thing wrong, instead of let's look at why. Why did you do that? Like, we just don't spend time. Like, let's address the issue. It's like, nope, bad, punished, go away. Okay, audiobook. I'll have to request it from my library.
And I do think a lot of it is resource-based because, like, the people that you first interact with as a child are your teachers. They're vastly overworked. They don't have any resources. Like, at best, maybe you do have a good counselor and they do have like that meditation set up or something that they've been trying to do these days. But for the most part, you're in charge of 20 to 30 students. You're just trying to keep things going. You also have to teach them so they'll be successful. So when you have a problem student, you're one person. Like, what are you supposed to do?
But they want you to be, I mean, I see all of those stories from teachers now while they're leaving their profession because they're expected to be all of these things with 33 students. They're like, you're supposed to be the teacher and disciplinarian and therapist and like, no, they can't.
And they're not even paid that amount. Like, they're paid, like, if they're lucky, they're paid their $50 to $70K a year with benefits, if they're lucky.
Yeah, that's not in the South. Christianity, which this country is trying so hard to be a theocracy, even though, I don't know, separation of church and state, they never heard of it. Yep.
They also don't even read their own Bible, and it bothers me.
Literally.
That's a different conversation.
Really do not. I was just talking to this with my manager. I don't know why we get into these. He asks questions, and I'm like, I'm not gonna lie. And he's always like, "How are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I'm surviving under capitalism, so I'm not doing great." But anyway, we were talking about that. I'm like, it's insane to me that people are in debt, hundreds of thousands of dollars for an education and or medical debt. That is crazy.
Well, and then in the education one, as someone who's now working in academia, you would think some of that money would go to them hiring full-time teachers, and it doesn't. I don't know where the money goes.
It's going to sport.
It goes nowhere.
It's going to sport.
It's not even going to sports. Like, you know how many deans run your school? I don't know what the deans do, but they all get the money.
I don't know what they do besides have offices cluttered with paper.
They do something, but I don't know what they do, and I don't think it's worth $1 million.
So let's not even.
Let's not
even. Because
we still have to vote for the man, and it sucks. I don't even know how to handle it.
Yep. Like, I'm like, what do you mean? It's always the U.S. is a nosy bitch. Why are you always in somebody else's business?
Well, it's really obvious why they want Israel to be like what it is, because it's our only foothold in the Middle East that kind of likes us. And it's where oil is and stuff.
Because why would they couldn't live in a normal house? course. Yes, I just am floored when I'm like, what do you mean giving more money? It's like they give money to cut, like, because she talks about that amount, and then I was reading another book that was talking about the amounts that started back in the 60s that we gave to Israel, and then how it's just grown. And I think Obama signed something like a deal for, excuse me, I forgot how many billions it was per year. And then recently, since October 7th, we've had emergency funds. What do you mean? What do you mean emergency funds? Because you know what that fund? My student loans that you said were back starting due back in October. What do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
That we can just emergency tanks and missiles and who knows how much that costs with the, did you see that thing with the Pentagon failing its like 6th audit? What do you mean? Because if I don't file my taxes for my little piece of change, you coming after me, but the Pentagon doesn't know what it did with billions, if not trillions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, and also everyone's like, well, we have to be protected. I'm like, from what? I don't actually think China cares that much about us. I just don't think anyone cares that much about us. Mexico doesn't care.
Also, yes, at big schools, they make in the millions. It's crazy.
Sure.
Related but not related. I don't know if you saw any clips from the recent hearing with this, was the CEO of TikTok who's from Singapore, and they're like, "Are you a Chinese citizen?" No, senator. I'm from Singapore. Have you ever been in the Chinese? He's like, no. They keep being like, but you're Chinese. No, I'm from Singapore. Have you ever served in China? Like, oh my!
It's like a different place, guys.
That's so embarrassing.
Like, so have you been in the Chinese army? Sir, I served in Singapore.
How are you a congressman if you don't know how maps work?
Do you have a Chinese passport, sir? He kept going, Congress, Senator. I'm Singapore. So you're from China. Like, what?
I'm just.
You have to laugh because it's so embarrassing.
Oh my God.
Tell us how prisons are like hotels where they play Xbox on. Yikes. Everywhere. Okay. And like, there's nowhere that's not under, there's no country that's perfect, but I'm just sorry when I'm just so confused when people look at our system and think this is the way. I'm like,
no, this is a messy, messy system. And I mean, I also do think that it's really hard to point at other systems that have much smaller, more homogeneous populations and be like, why don't we just do that? It's like, well, that assumes we have a homogeneous population. We don't on any level. And also, they have 100 million people, and we have many more. Yes,
America is too damn big. And oh my God, we're at 51 minutes. I was trying to keep this at an hour. I still had some more things, but we may not get to every topic in the book, obviously, but I did want to touch on a couple things that I had on here, like the revision of social movements. And the biggest to me, of course, is the Black Panther movement, because I just remember growing up and basically being taught that Martin Luther King Jr. was the good one and Malcolm X was bad, and the Black Panther Party was like this evil communist party. And then you learn about it and you're like, oh, they wanted free food for children in the schools. Oh, okay.
So terrifying.
And that's one of the repetitions I liked. Like, I like getting to hear their tenets over and over again. It's like,
yes, it was. I'm going to run through them really quick. So they had their 10-point program. So number 1 was, we want freedom. Okay. 2, full employment. 3, an end to robbery by capitalists of our Black and oppressed communities. 4, we want decent housing fit for the shelter of human beings. Key words, fit for the shelter of human beings. So I've seen some of these affordable housings, and it's 5, we want decent education for our people that exposes the true nature of this decadent American society. We want education that teaches us our true history and our role in present-day society. 6, let's see. What did she say? Completely free healthcare for all Black and oppressed people. Number 7, immediate end to police brutality and the murder of Black people, other people of color, and all oppressed people inside the United States. 8, immediate end to all wars of aggression. 9, we want freedom for all Black and oppressed people now held in U.S., federal, state, county, city, and military prisons and jails. Trials by a jury of peers for all persons charged with so-called crimes under the laws of this country. And 10, we want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, peace, and people's community control of modern technology. And I'm like, wow, that all of those things could be applicable today.
That is
my only note.
Domestic terrorism.
Yes.
Yes.
My only note is I actually think I don't know what freedom is anymore, though. Like, I don't. We want freedom. Freedom is a constant struggle. Like, okay, we keep discussing it. I think that's the one thing where I'm like, I don't know what that is anymore.
I don't know if I don't know if the definition changes by person, because I guess it depends on what you consider freedom. Yeah, so I don't know. What is in your mind, what do you conceptual, like, if you were like had to define what you would say as freedom, what would you say? Because I feel like in an ideal free world, it would never exist, but it would be like a government, because I don't think you can run a country without a government. Like, no, but that is more socialistic, where there are things in place for people: universal health care, universal basic income. We're not working all of the time. Gun control is a thing. There's not a fear of children being shot in schools. We're not trying to steal resources from another country. You're paying for those imports equally. Everyone's being paid a living wage. If you want to just live off of universal income, you can do that. If you want to work more, you can. There's no billionaires. I don't know. Like, I don't know what true freedom, like, obviously it's not just to run wild and do whatever. Like, there do have to be structures in place. But
I found a Merriam-Webster definition.
Oh, what'd I say?
The quality or state of being free, such as the absence of necessity, coercion, or constraint in choice or action. Which makes me feel like none of us are free, because there's definitely constraint in choice or action.
Yes.
There is always constraint. I cannot go on this vacation I want because I must pay this.
Exactly. Yes. So I don't know if, like, to their definition, that ever can really exist, but I think there is more that can be achieved if we had different.
I mean, there's also different aspects of freedom. Like, I want financial freedom. Get rid of it. But so I think it's more than, there are so many different aspects of it, and on a larger scale, thinking about the country as a whole, like, how would we even ever get there?
And I think it's kind of like when we did the ACE book discussion, like the definition of asexuality was really hard because you need the definition of sexuality first in many ways. And I feel like freedom only gets defined when you're comparing it to the thing you're not free from.
Yeah. So yeah. Everyone deserves freedom, but some deserve more freedom than others.
You know what freedom is? I want whatever my cats have. My cats are not free to leave the house, but I want whatever they have.
Nigel, that's the lie. Claudia de la Cruz, yes. Her and someone else. So I just, again, in this ideal world where I can, because I've talked about this with different people, when they're like, well, if we didn't have capitalism and we had a universal basic income, everyone would just be lazy. And I'm like, no, I don't think people understand that people have natural inclines. Like, Andrew would never want to just stay home all the time. He gets very claustrophobic. He wants to get out of the house and do things. I think people would be able to work in different avenues that they actually enjoyed, or some people do, were like, I enjoy cleaning. Maybe they enjoy being like part of being a janitor, or just like checking out books at the library, or just like stocking shelves because it's something very simple that you can do, and listen to audiobooks. The problem is most people can't afford to do those things, or they have to do those things in conjunction with multiple other jobs. So I don't think that would be a problem. I think you would have a better industry overall, because people could actually choose what they wanted to do, because it didn't have to depend on, I got into this industry only because of the money. I don't give, like a nurse, I don't give a fuck about you as a person. But I don't know. Who am I?
No, I mean, I know that that's true because I'm a very financially privileged individual. And like, I guess right now, because Ryan finally got a job again, I could be a kept woman. I could just do nothing. I could stay at home. I could do nothing. But I'm going to go work my butt off and be an adjunct at the community college and get paid nothing because they think I work 30 hours a week, and they are wrong.
Yes.
I love doing it. I need to leave the house. I can't stay here.
Yes. Even like, when I was in Sicily and not having to work, I felt like I was like, I need to be doing something. Like I want to do things, but it's like they make it hard or to always do something you're passionate about. Hierarchy is inherently dehumanizing. Yes. Or I would love to bake bread. I'd work in a bakery part-time. Like I don't want to talk to people, but I'd get to be in the back. I'd like to be a baker's apprentice in the countryside.
If there are jobs that aren't being filled because they are not attractive, then it's a clear sign that they should be being paid more.
Yes. This is the kind of job I want. Victoria, hook me up. Yes. Angela, what do you teach?
Oh, right now I'm teaching biology, but the dream is physics. But I teach both biology and physics. Right now I'm teaching two intro biology courses. One's human biology and one's cell DNA, and the other one is basically the intro biochemistry course that nurses have to take.
Ooh, too much for my brain.
It's a lot for my brain. I taught the scientific method like 4 times this week. It was a lot.
Yes. And people argue that everyone would want to do easy jobs. No.
Humans aren't like, I just don't understand, like, if people forget that they are human too when they make these sweeping statements. Like, what would you do in this scenario?
A couple last things. Individualism versus community, which we've already touched on, which is a big problem in America. And I don't think she touches on this in here, but I've heard this from other people talking also about America's push for like the nuclear family and how that's made us closed off, and just talking about how we treat children in the United States versus like in Japan, you know, like little kids are giving a lot of like independence and autonomy because they know like, one, for the most part, they're not going to be like kidnapped or abused, or like if they did need help, a random person would help them. But in America, we're very much like, and
did you see there's a show on Netflix of like kids in Japan going grocery shopping?
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm going grocery shopping at my big age. And they're just out there in their little coat, so cute and independent. But I do think, again, I wrote in here, individualism will be our downfall. So the last quote at the end of the chapter, she said, so whatever I'm doing, I always feel myself directly connected to those communities. And I think that this is an era where we have to encourage that sense of community, particularly at a time when neoliberalism attempts to force people to think of themselves only in individual terms and not in collective terms. It is in collectivities that we find reservoirs of hope and optimism. But it always is like, I mean, I feel like since the dawn of America, it's like, well, you got to think about you and how you are better than that person. So I don't know how we change that, because I feel like it's so ingrained in the collective to like, I gotta worry about me. I gotta protect my house. This is my right. The Constitution says me.
Jess, the answer is Owenstown.
Well, some land. But I have seen more people online who have talked about whether it's been friends. I've seen like friends get together and like either buy a house together, or maybe they get some land and they put like 2 mobile homes on, or they build a tiny house. And I've seen groups of people, like maybe it was like 3 couples and their children who bought land in like France. They have more money and we're redoing like an old farmhouse. And I feel like that's like the only way we're going to survive is to come together instead of everybody being in their little house in the suburbs. Like we need to rely on one another. But I don't know how you do that. People are doing it in small groups, but they don't know how you do it. Inspire people to trust other people on a large scale.
I don't have any words of hope, but I'll say me a butler.
We can't.
Yeah.
Ooh, back to that. Yes. Unmotivated people freeloading on their inherited wealth. Assume everyone would be
exactly.
Blue and Kathleen. Yes. Oh my gosh. There's one TikToker that I follow, and his videos are always talking about like the suburbs and talking about what would be better, like mixed communities that maybe have houses, some townhouses, duplexes, different stuff like this, and like talking about roads and all that is very interesting. And I live in the suburbs, and yeah, the suburbs really are the pits. I mean, this one, they don't all have to be. If they made them more like tiny little towns where you had things, like, I don't expect everything to be within walking distance, but where I am is really tiny. There's like maybe 3,000 people. And there's so many things that are in walking distance, but there's no sidewalks. So I have to get in my car and drive a minute to Sonic because there's no sidewalk to get there safely. Where I should be able to get to the Sonic, this gas station, a bank, grocery store, the library, all within 5 to 10 minutes walking, but they have no sidewalks in place. Where they're building where I am, they're just putting all houses where I'm like, you can mix in apartments, you can mix in little shops, but it's all like, let's put you all out here. So then this also connects, I think, to our dependency on cars.
Also, there's like this thing, and it's different by state because states' rights, which are bullshit, like 99.9% of the times, unless we're talking about like, you know, plants that are illegal in some states and not others. That's the only time states' rights ever make sense to me. But there's zoning rules. So like you can't have 2-family homes or apartments if you have a certain quota of those types, which is why we have all the 1-family home zoning.
Yep.
And
it's so dumb because where like I'm in a new, so it's like it was just woods, and so it's a new development, and it would just make more sense if they had like, okay, you have these homes, but maybe on this side you have like some businesses and you have some apartments on top, and then maybe behind that you have like some townhouses or something. Does not all need to be single family homes, and then you have to drive 15-20 minutes for everything. It's so dumb.
I mean, I would say I live in a slightly better suburb than you by like a fair bit. Like I can see my grocery store out my window, but it's still annoying to walk to because they only have crosswalks every, like, I would say quarter mile. And I have to walk away from the grocery store to cross the street safely. It's like a 4-lane road. And like my city brain just wants to jaywalk so bad.
If we move to a smaller business structure, the demands would be lower and the economy would be more sustainable. And again, I'm no economist because I feel like they shouldn't exist anyway because it's all fucking made up. Money isn't real. They print it. Like, I know there's systems and it's applying to blah, 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 blah. It does not matter. You do not take $1 and put it in the ground and a seed sprouts. I hate it.
That's what we should reset. I feel like this is a thing that'd be interesting to reset. Just everyone's debt to zero.
Yes.
And then just like,
because also to that, how is America in debt but giving people money? How your broke ass is giving countries money?
Let's not talk about the debt ceiling. It's a terrifying thing that shouldn't exist. Okay.
Every goddamn 8 weeks, it seems like they're like, oh no, we're gonna shut down.
Only Republicans do that bullshit. Like everyone's always like, both parties are at fault. Okay, the Democrats aren't great. They're not angels. They're not perfect. They never fuck with the debt ceiling. That is only nasty, crusty Republicans.
Every time. Oh my God. I don't know if I sent this TikTok to you, Ray. I send you so many. I don't know. But there was this guy who was saying, like, people were saying, oh, I miss college. And he was like, I don't know if we miss college and we just miss living in walkable communities where we were close to our friends. You could just pop up on them. You could walk to the gym. You could walk to a cafe, all of these things within walking distance. And it's just like, I guess, you know, with as we've advanced and people move further away from home and stuff like that for various reasons. But I just also like, I would be so much happier if I don't have any friends here. All of my friends live in this computer or on my phone.
I can say, as someone who moved back to walking distance to my mom, yeah, I'm much happier. My mental health has skyrocketed.
Yeah, it's just like, I mean, I love talking to y'all through my phone. Don't get me wrong, but it's just different than being able to walk to a friend or even drive to a friend.
We could have walked Nigel together. When Nigel walks. We haven't figured out that whole teleportation thing yet, though, but that would mess up. You know a book that you should read if you want to think about how society responds to a very breakable thing? Exit West. Exit West is a book, and it's really good. It's short, 300 pages, and it's this idea of suddenly doors open up to go to different places, and they keep trying to control the doors because they don't want people crossing these borders. Yeah, that's the book. Okay. And it's like, you can't because new doors keep showing up. So it's like, okay, so how do we respond? We can't. This is a breaking thing. It breaks the world. People are just in different countries that they don't have citizenship for, and they can't be forced away. And
oh yeah, I want to read that.
It's a very, and it does center this couple and like how they fall in and out of love and stuff. But like, I just love the story so much. Some people would call it sci-fi, and like, I guess the doors are sci-fi, but it's more literary.
People do a book too. They make a little communities for each other. It's not perfect. Yeah, I mean, and obviously we're individualistic I feel like online where we definitely have more of community, but in person, overall, we're still very individual, and I don't know. It doesn't.
No.
Yes, exactly. But again, with America wanting to be a theocracy, and they're like man, woman, 2.5 children or more, that is what a family is. And it's also, I think Ace talked about this with the structure of how insurance is. One, it being tied to your job is fucking shitty, but also that you can't, if you are taking care, I think her example was like taking care of your mother for somebody, you're not allowed to put her on your insurance. Or like if you and your friend live together and you're working, you can't add your friend to your insurance because you have to be married or that person has to be a dependent of you. It's so everything goes back to just like, no, this is what we consider a family, and so this is how your life can be.
Don't get me started on insurance companies. Like, if it's going to be privatized, I want it to be privatized like every other stupid privatized thing, like cable. At least with cable, if I get pissed, I can go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Insurance company, if I get pissed, I'm stuck with them till open enrollment. Like,
yeah. It's the enrollment times, the provider networks. Please, like, spare me. Oh my God. I love this one. I saw a TikTok and it was like telling my friend good night, and she just like she moved into the same apartment building. Anyway, to round this out,
you could move to Ohio, cheap here, house cheap.
Yeah, house cheap.
House
so something I think for this whole thing, we have to learn to act against what is normal. But again, it goes back to, I feel like us people, like us here, the ones we see on social media doing the work, I don't know how we make that a larger thing. Like, I don't know how we make enough people care. Because I feel like some people are like, oh, well, this, like when you see boomers online saying like, you kids just don't want to work, or this is how it was. I had to struggle, so you should too. Like, it's like, how do we make people actually care so that we actually may make a shift? That, and I'm not saying that's a downside of this book. This is obviously just her essays, but I don't know. That's just kind of my final thought, my final rhetorical question is, I don't know how we do any of this.
I
got some interesting things over there.
Bugs that terrify me. I cannot.
Yeah. No, I'm like I know New Zealand everywhere has its downfall, Rev. I don't know. Australia, I be seeing some things on the TikTok. I don't know. So anyone's final thoughts, anyone you want to share? And then also my last question would be, for March, what should our theme be? Like, what, because we obviously didn't vote on this one, but I was wanting to put up like a poll for people to vote for March. But like, what should our topic or theme be for me to get some what is the word?
If we still have these questions of how do we get towards these things, I'm leaning towards maybe some indigenous nonfiction, since they tend to always have that theme of community and stuff like that, and like actionable steps and stuff. We didn't do braiding sweetgrass, right?
We did.
Did we?
I don't know. Were you in that?
I don't remember. Maybe we did.
I read in that live show. I don't know.
I was there. But like, we're not braiding sweetgrass specifically, but there's like that Red Nation deal thing. So I guess if we want to try and find answers to questions we brought up in this, that's a theme. That's, I guess, what I'm saying as the theme. You brought up questions. If we want to like go into abolition more, if we want to go into how can we organize our local communities more, like I'm sure there are nonfictions for those.
Yeah. Country to country, county to county.
Problem is they keep changing county lines.
And it just feels like, I'm like, wait, how are we in 2024? Didn't we just have an election year? I feel like I just recovered from election year whiplash and all the bullshit, and then it's back.
I don't think we ever get a break. Was a rough year for me, because 2023 was Ohio's "Do I get to have reproductive rights" election year, and we were all like,
"Don't you love it?"
And before that, Republicans were like, "We never use the special election, and we don't want it. We actually are making it illegal, but this year we're going to do it so we can change our amendment process so that this won't pass." But luckily, it failed. But like,
yeah,
2023 was a rough year for me in Ohio, and I'm not ready for 2024.
Yeah, I need, and I know it's not possible to put everything into one book, and it's in a lot of the things that we're asking. I don't know if there's even words to like, or like a concrete theory or hypothesis about how it could happen. But like, I'm like, I need someone to give me a proposition every year, and I'm so tired. I'm like, I know we can't take a break because people have to be real and stuff, but I'm almost like.
I'm trying to figure out why they came up with 4 years, because like 4 is a weird number. Like there's 10 years in a decade. Why wasn't it 5? Like I don't actually understand the 4 years.
The only thing I want to do with politics right now is I want ageism. I know that's rude, but if Nikita want to get on the internet talk about we need to make retirement to 70. First, shut up, you dumb bitch.
Wild.
We need to make an age line for politicians because I'm tired of these old crusties having control and just getting to sit
the most
there.
Radical thing I've ever heard that I'm actually kind of like, if that happened, I'd be cool with it, is changing voting from voting to just actual random polling people's names out of a hat. And there was a whole podcast that I was into on it, and by the end I was convinced that it would be better, because then proportionally in your House of Representatives you would have different races, genders, ages, and working class versus upper class. So you would have all these perspectives actually writing laws together. Because right now we only get upper class people who write laws. Like it's very rare that you get someone like AOC who like.
I do. It feels.
Oh, I vote. I've voted every year since I've had.
I still vote in South Carolina, even though there's not a point. But I also live in a red state now. But I still do it. Ugh. Actual steps. Oh, I did just see she just came out with a new one, and I did love Mediocre. Let this strategize you. Okay, I'm writing all these ideas down. I'll do a little research. But
I guess if we're like trying to get better, because I do think the point of this collection and the point of what Angela Davis is doing at a lot of these talks is education is a first step. Like you really have to inform people before you can get people to do what you want them to do.
Yes. Oh my God. Stop cops. It's stressing me out. Because again, all of the stuff that I didn't realize until this past year, learning that so many police in America are trained by Israeli. A book on unions. Okay, I'm gonna look these up.
I do. That was another thing when I was a kid, and like schools or like politicians are trying to be like unions are bad, but like I was like, why would it be bad? And the answer is it's not.
No, it's bad maybe for capitalism. Yes. All right. Well, we're at hour 16, so I think we're at a good place. We covered a lot. Do you have any final comments or thoughts about the book you wanted to share? I'm glad I read it again, especially after, like I said earlier, having a different lens. And that makes me want to reread Prisons Are Obsolete, which is short anyway. But I definitely will have some topics down, so I'll definitely look those up so we can continue on this path of collective education and whatever, because I struggle with feeling helpless, especially since this, escalation and aggression since October 7th. So this feels like my one small smidge I can contribute besides like buying eSIMs for Palestine is like having this space where we can, read and discuss these things. So those are my final thoughts.
Yeah. I'm glad it gave me an opportunity to read it. I definitely read more nonfiction when this is happening. So
yes. Yay! I thank everyone for joining. Great combo. I'm glad it's back. Last year was rough, but I survived. We here.
You never told me, is Ray now an official other co-host? Is it exciting? There's 3 of us now. Yeah, I was hoping to get her to say yes now.
Whoa. Wow, Angela, relax.
Ray said, let's not.
I mean, this is like my first time here, and you're talking about official code.
Dude, my first time. That's what Jess did to me.
Angela, I think I waited till after 2 times. And then I was like, so Angela. Yes, thank you, everyone. It was great. Oh my God. Good night. Go to sleep.
Oh my God. Kathleen, you see how they tried to get me?
She was like, absolutely not. All right, y'all. Have a wonderful day. I will see you all later. Ta-ta.